Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in this workshop. I would like to speak in French, but unfortunately, it's not possible. It doesn't matter. At first, what is the macro-regional strategy? It's an iterated framework endorsed by the European Council to address common challenges faced by a defined geographical area relating to member states and third countries located in the same geographical area, which thereby benefit from strengthened cooperation, contributing to achievement of economic, social, and territorial cohesion. And the question is why a macro-regional strategy for the Alpine area? This Alpine area is composed of territories with contrasted demographic, social, and economic trends, and a great cultural and linguistic diversity. This diversity goes along with a great variety of governance systems and traditions. Both the common specificities of the Alpine area and its variety and diversity call for cooperation. The Alpine region represents a living and working space for the resident population and an attractive tourist destination for millions of guests every year. The Alps are the water tower of Europe and are known all over the world for their natural beauty, varied landscapes, rich biodiversity, and cultural heritage. The Alpine region is a unique territory which has an important potential for dynamism, but facing major challenges such as economic globalization, demographic trends, climate change, the energy challenge, and its specific geographical position in Europe. An Alpine micro-regional strategy would provide an opportunity to improve cross-border cooperation in the Alpine states, as well as identifying common goals and implementing them more effectively through transnational collaboration. The strategy will build upon three general action-oriented pillars. First, to improve the competitiveness, prosperity, and cohesion of the Alpine region. Two, to ensure accessibility and connectivity for all the inhabitants of the Alpine region. And third, to make the Alpine region environmentally sustainable and attractive. Concerning Pillar 2, which is addressed by this workshop, a few elements of thematic framework. The Alpine region is a major European crossroads. However, sustainable transport systems are a major challenge for the region. A coordinated policy, therefore, able to match the transport needs of the macro-region, population welfare, and the equilibrium of particularly fragile environment is a priority for this strategy. This topic will be addressed in the first session of the workshop. Besides transport systems, the notion of connectivity also embraces communication infrastructures and services, including tourism. Also, citizens and business in the Alps are usually well connected. A higher accessibility to information and communication technologies could further bridge accessibility gaps remaining in the region, as well as contribute to a more sustainable model of development. This topic will be addressed in the second session of the workshop. As a consequence, the main priority of this pillar will be the following: better overall transport system in terms of sustainability and quality, improve sustainable accessibility for all alpine areas, and a better connected society in the region. The workshops of today are held in the framework of the action plan elaboration. Several member states had organized forums which had permitted to both mobilize the stakeholders and collect proposals subject to improve the action plan. The workshop of today seeks the same approach, giving the opportunity to the public and private actors, that you are, to participate in the elaboration of this action plan and to help the representatives of the states, the region, and the Commission to improve the draft action plan. And I thank you for your comments and proposals. The elaboration of the strategy and its implementation requires a significant work of formalization, as it belongs to the three no's rule: no new additional program, no new fund, no new regulation. The strategy aims at making coherent all the European, national and regional policies implemented in this space, and shall encourage convergence of human and financial resources that are mobilized at this scale. The first selective criterion of the measure taken by the strategy shall be the added value brought by their implementation at the Alpine region scale. Indeed, the issues of improving freight transit, improving passengers' mobility, especially in the cross-border areas, of developing relation between urban territories and mountainous areas, of digital network interconnection or accessibility to services of general interest, require a common view shared by both the public and private actors concerned. It therefore requires the setting up of a coordinated actions program and deep cooperation within this space. This is the challenge we have to face together, particularly today, and your contributions will make concrete the work already done and therefore award the efforts achieved so far. Now, Mr. Onida.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning from my side, from DG Regio of the European Commission as well. We have, by a good Italian tradition, gained already a little bit of delay, so I'll try to be very, very brief and regain some time. I will say a couple of words of introduction in Italian, then I'll switch to English again. Buongiorno a tutti, signore e signori.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On the part of the DG Regio of the European Commission, I welcome you. I have the task of a facilitator of this workshop, meaning providing an introduction about some facts and figures and challenges for the future, so that it will then be possible to leave the floor to the other speakers who will then present further indications. And I'd like to underline that today is a consultation day, so the part of the debate is very, very important. So the 25 minutes debate we have is very important because we will collect your opinions and your input to continue with the elaboration of the action plan. And now I will speak English again.
As I said, I will just give a short introductory input on some issues which are at stake today in the Alpine region, and which are being now looked at closely in the framework of the construction of this macro-regional strategy. If I can, I don't know if I managed to get this started myself. Katja? Yeah, here we go. Okay, so very briefly, some facts, figures, and challenges on transport in the Alpine region. Well, this is a funny story because with one of the speakers, we worked a long time together on the same issue, so we have some overlapping slides, so I will skip that because it will come again with the slides of Mr. Ferrazza. It was absolutely unintentional, but you see, when you work in the same topic for a number of years, that happens. So on this we will come back. One slide I wanted to show you is that when we talk about traffic in the Alps, it's very typical to talk about transit, but the transit is not the only subject of concern in the Alps. We have also a big issue of internal transport, in particular when we talk about passenger traffic flows. Internal transport is up to 72% of the total, so it's not something that has to be neglected, which doesn't mean, of course, that traffic of transit is not important, but internal transit is also very, very important, internal traffic. These are, and it's again, I think it's a slide that comes back, the main transport corridors in the Alps, just to show that the modal split is very unsatisfactory in the sense that we have today still a predominant share of goods transported through the Alps on road, and only through Switzerland we have a sort of a reverse ratio where the modal split has a predominance of rail over the road. Again, Mr. Ferrazza will come back to that, so I don't need to stay too much on that. Some critical issues that we have identified, well, everybody knows which critical issues are in the Alps, are first of all the concentration of the traffic flows on certain areas, which is increasing because of course transport is increasing, and the concentration is also increasing where it is easiest, where it is cheaper. And then of course the starting point is that the Alps are a vulnerable environment where air pollution and noise are impacting particularly strong. You know that air pollution and noise, due to the geomorphology of the Alpine valleys, has a much stronger effects in these areas than on the plains. And that is due to the fact, if I can, that we have this concentration of, if I can manage that, oops. Here we go, but it goes too much. Yeah. We have only a few possibilities to pass through the Alps, and that determines a phenomenon of concentration. You see, this is a graph which is made taking into account the density of the passes through of the number of cars and trucks which pass through the Alps, and you see the large majority through the Benner axis, partly also through the Frejus and the other passes. But this is a main issue because, of course, where we have this concentration, we have the highest environmental problem. We have also, I'll say, an opposite maybe phenomenon, which is again, on rail, we have also a few possibilities, and they are too few in the sense that they are congested, they are not working optimally. So we have to work also with this in mind, that the rail connection, which is the preferred route today for moving from road to rail, is also limited by the number of existing infrastructures. One important, let's say, fact which opens also the debate on the need for a macro-regional strategy is the fact that we really need international cooperation, because there is a clear correlation between the different axes of transit through the Alps. And you can see it in the first, this is a bit technical, but you can see in the very first one, you see that the closure of the Mont Blanc tunnel for 3 years led to an extremely important increase of transit in the nearby transit possibilities, and this independently on the accidents which happen, unfortunately, there is a clear correlation. So that means that if we take measures on one part of the Alps, this has effects on other parts of the Alps, and that requires necessarily a coordinated approach. Finally, This we talked already. Yes, finally, we have transport in the Alps is a topic which has been debated for many, many years, which is the subject of a lot of discussion and structures. We have a protocol on transport by the Alpine Convention, which is in force, ratified by all the Alpine states except Switzerland. Switzerland has not ratified it, but applies a national policy on transport, which is very compatible with the transport protocol of the Alpine Convention. And this protocol requires now, implies that no new transalpine highways can be constructed through the Alps. Then we have a structure which is called the Zurich Group. I think that my colleague Andreas Nägeli from the European Commission would say something about that. Then we have bilateral conferences on the so-called TEN-T. The question here is, do we have duplications? Do we have synergies that we can create? Can a macro-regional approach help avoiding these duplications and creating synergies among these existing structures so that we can save money, work better, and work more efficiently? So this was it. I will now hand over directly to Philipp Klaas, who is contracted as an expert by the European Commission to carry out a survey of the public consultation which took place over the summer until the 15th of October. And Philipp was so good and patient to do all the analysis of the replies, and he will now present to you the results of this consultation. Thank you, Philipp.
Thank you, Marco. So my role today is to present you the result, the outcome of the consultation. The consultation was prepared by a subgroup of the steering committee of the EUSALP, and they defined they predefined some priorities, strategic priorities on which questions were based. The outcome of this consultation is showing a little different accent or focus than the one initially taught by the subgroup. The strategic priority number 1 is highly confirmed. There were about 400 people replying to the consultation, and the half of them went to strategic priority number 1, better overall transport systems. This is where Marco was putting the accent on, and I don't want to all the details, but it's really better intermodality for freight, better intermodality for passengers, and overall better management of transport and mobility. The second strategic priority predefined by the subgroup, which was improve sustainable accessibility for all alpine areas, so a higher focus on the traffic for the inhabitants, became in fact the third priority in the consultation, and the second one became a better connected society in the region, which will be the second part of this workshop. In the initially second priority, some suggested actions scored very low, like providing mobility options for all in times of demographic change, or sharing innovation processes and devices. The second part of my work was to look at what did the people suggest as major challenges for the freight and transport. Here it is. So the question was an open question, and just what would you consider as challenges in this sector? I tried to group the recommendation or the suggestions in two groups, one for freight transport, a second one for passenger transport. So major challenges for freight transport was a better macro-regional coordination of infrastructure investments, build or coordinate better the missing links of the TEN-T corridors, particularly cross-border, improve the intermodal transport supply, promoting modal shift with taxes and incentives, harmonized toll and tax systems, because as Marco said, we see that this has an impact on where the traffic is going, improve all transport modes rather than restricting the trucks, so even in road transport there is some improvement possible, and last mile logistics needs also to be considered. concrete actions or example of projects that were suggested in the consultation for freight transport. Some of them are related to infrastructure, and we see here macro-regional transport strategy, develop the tunnels, many names of tunnels are suggested, achieve the major infrastructure corridors, Lyon-Turin, Brenner, and city nodes, Lyon, Brescia, and so on. Prepare the optimal use of the new tunnels. It's nice to have the new tunnels, but all the access roads, the access railways in Bavaria, in Italy, Lombardy, and so on, have to be prepared, and also all the soft aspect. Also concrete actions related to management and regulation, introduce a new governance model, better monitoring of traffic flows and impact, harmonize tax and toll systems, introduce or generalize the performance-based fee on heavy goods vehicles. Many people mention the Swiss example, and some even suggest the introduction of the Alpine Cross Exchange that was prepared in many means. Which are now the major challenges that came out of the consultation for passenger transport? Reduce the individual traffic with sustainable transport of better quality. You can only reduce it if the public transport is getting better. Connecting existing lines cross-border in remote areas, Italy, France, Italy, Switzerland, and so on. Maintain or redevelop public transport in remote areas. There is a trend to reduce public transport there. Invest in local railways instead of roads and high-speed train. Improve the inner Alpine accessibility. Integrate practical information on timetables and tariff in the region, and common management of transport operations. Which were concrete examples of projects, actions that were suggested in the consultation for passenger transport. Many people speak about modernizing local railways. There are many local railways that are in a bad shape or that are not working anymore. I will not mention you all of them. Nice, Ventimiglia, Torino, Munich, Lindau, Bregenz, Zurich, Northern Bernerlet, and so on. Improve transport services on existing infrastructure. Put the light vehicles on the train, so not only container, but also light vehicles. And intervallies, east-west cross-border connection like Susa, Briançon, Fridolfing, and so on. Also some suggestions on the services, so not on the infrastructure. A better synchronized transport system, which means harmonized schedules, harmonized tariff strategy, and also communication platform about all of this. And common unique e-ticket for public transport. Some even think about having it applied for all transport modes, so air, train, bus, and that you can have one ticket from origin to destination. A few ideas also on innovation, low carbon access to tourism stations, tourism for people coming from the north or from the airport, ski buses, shuttles, the examples of alpine piers, ski stations without car, access to mountain, develop electromobility, so cars without fuel, trams, buses with hydrogen or liquid petroleum gas, cable transport, regional car sharing, and also some networks combining the use of train with the use of bicycle. Based on that, I tried to summarize what could be strategic priority actions in freight transport based on the based on the reply of the consultation. First one could be coordinate infrastructure investments. Second one, take accompanying measures to new tunnels on the access to these tunnels and also logistic platforms to have a better modal shift. Improve the governance of transalpine freight. Harmonize toll and taxes, moving to performance-based fee, and maybe an extreme solution, introduce Alpine Cross Exchange. The same for public transport. modernize local railways and cross-border connections, interoperability of mobility information systems to make their use more easy, transnational multimodal ticketing, and low-carbon access to tourism stations. The questions to debate, but there are speakers in between. Are the suggested actions relevant to cooperate at macro-regional level? It's nice to have an idea, it's nice to have a priority. There should really be an added value to do it at macro-regional level. Otherwise, it could be done at inter-regional level or national level. And, of course, do you have other ideas of priority actions to suggest to this process? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klaas. Now I'm opening the first session, which is dedicated to the transport issues, and I remind you that there will be a second session, which will be dedicated to connectivity. And now let me introduce the 4 following speakers who will deliver introductory statements. Mr. Andreas Negeler from DG Move of the European Commission. Mr. Roberto Ferrazza, Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, Italy, of course. Mr. Damiano De Simone, Legambiente from Italy. And Mr. Hans-Peter Böhner, Ministry of Interior, Building and Transport from Bavaria, Germany. Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the first one, Mr. Andreas Negeler.
Yes, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I've been asked to report to you on some elements of the European transport policy which are related to cross-Alpine transport. And since I've been given 7 minutes, I have 7 topics to discuss with you. The first one is, of course, the EU-Swiss land transport agreement, which has been signed in 1999 and is in force since 2002. It provides for the liberalization of international transport between the EU and Switzerland, and it provides for a coordination of transport policy. There are some important principles in this agreement, among which the non-discrimination principle, the proportionality principle, the free choice of mode of transport, which seems particularly interesting in the context of modal shift policies, and of course the ban on unilateral quantitative restrictions. There are regular meetings of the Joint Committee, which is the Inland Transport Committee between the EU and Switzerland. It meets twice a year. And this agreement, in the framework of this agreement, an Alpine Transport Observatory has also been set up, and its annual reports are published on our websites, on the websites both of the European Commission and of the Swiss Federal Office of Transport. Now, number 2 is the Transport Protocol of the Alpine Convention. As has been already said, the EU ratified the Transport Protocol last year, and this protocol has hence become part of EU law, of the EU acquis. It means that the EU shares the objectives and the principles of the protocol. I think this is very, very important. And the fact that we have ratified this protocol, it also confirms the importance which the Alpine region has in EU transport policy. And as has already been mentioned, one particular issue of the Transport Protocol is this Article 11, paragraph 1, which says that no new large capacity roads are to be built for transalpine transport. So the EU has now fully accepted this as well, which is then no surprise that in our TEN-T policy, most actions in the Alps refer to rail projects, not road projects. Now we have, on the map you can see the core network corridors, which have been agreed in 2013. And there are 9 of them, and 4 core network corridors cross the Alps. It's the Mediterranean corridor, which is the green one, from Portugal to all the way to Ukraine. Then the pink one, then we have the orange one, which is the Rhine-Alpine corridor, goes from Rotterdam, Genoa. And then we have the pink one, which is the Scandinavian Mediterranean corridor, all the way from Scandinavia to Sicily, to Malta even. And finally, we have the Baltic-Adriatic corridor, which is the blue one, going from Gdansk to the Adriatic Sea. Now, some of these corridors are very closely related to the rail freight corridors, and there is, of course, a coordination between the TEN-T corridors and the rail freight corridors, if it's appropriate. And we have for the transport projects, we have 26 billion euro available in the Connecting Europe facility between 2014 and 2020, and more than 3/4 of this money is being spent on these core network corridors. So you can imagine that we will spend also quite a bit on improving these rail connections across the Alps on these corridors. Now, each core network corridor has set up a corridor platform which brings together the relevant stakeholders and the member states, and each of them is chaired by a European coordinator. Okay. Number 4 out of 7 is the follow-up Zurich process. Here the EU participates merely as an observer because it's an intergovernmental forum which brings together the transport ministers of the Alpine countries. The first meeting was in Zurich in 2001 following a series of tragic accidents in Alpine road channels, and the follow-up Zurich process, it looks for ways to improve the safety and the sustainability of transalpine transport. Right now, it is under Slovenian presidency, and the follow-up Zurich process has currently 2 working groups and 2 ad hoc groups. A working group on traffic management systems, which looks at, in particular now at the implementation of Toll Plus, which is a bit of an extended Euro vignette concept. And it also looks at the offer of, tries to provide an overview of what is available in terms of combined transport across the Alps. Another working group is ENVALP, which deals with environmental issues related to transalpine traffic. And then there are 2 ad hoc groups, one on safety in railway tunnels and one on incident management. There was a 5th group which dealt with data collection, but it has been absorbed now by the Alpine Traffic Observatory, which works under the EU Swiss Land Transport Agreement. And now, one more element is road charging. Here we have the Eurovignette Directive 99/62, EC, and it provides for differentiation of road charges by Euro emission class of vehicles, which is now obligatory whenever you have a new charging system. And then we have the internalization of external costs is now possible for local air pollution and noise pollution. And we have the markup in mountainous regions, which can go up to 25% of the maximum level otherwise allowed. And we have the external cost values. They may be multiplied by up to 2 in mountainous areas because, as we have heard, the impact of air pollution and noise in alpine areas is so much bigger than elsewhere. Now, here is a graph from the 2013 annual report of the Alpine Traffic Observatory, and it gives you an overview the development of the Euro classes, which crossed the Swiss Alps. I mean, the Swiss have had this differentiation of road charges by Euro class for some time, and you can clearly see that it really helps in bringing in cleaning up the fleet, because right now almost more than 80% of all traffic is Euro 5 and Euro 6 vehicles, which is the latest generation, and it's been this differentiation by Euro class has been a real success in cleaning up also Transalpine road traffic. Now, we have a modal shift policy, as you may know from the white paper, which has been issued in 2011. It says that we want to shift up to 30% of all long-distance traffic from road to other more sustainable modes by 2030, and more than 50% by 2050. Now, Transalpine transit traffic is a classical example of this long-distance traffic. So it really is to be shifted to other modes. We do, however, not understand the target as a forced modal shift target, because we do not foresee any obligation to move to other modes, but I have to stop. But this target is to be understood as a byproduct of the implementation of policies like increasing the competitiveness of rail. Now, the white paper may undergo a midterm review next year with the new commissioner. And finally, we have the free movement of goods, which is some regions, they like modal shift policies to such an extent that they would rather ban lorries on the road. But here we have some limits how far we can go, because we have the free movement of goods, which is a fundamental freedom of the EU, and it may only be restricted for overriding reasons of public interest, which is like environmental or health concerns. But then the restrictions have to be proportionate. They cannot go beyond what is necessary to achieve the overriding objective. And if other measures are available which have a less impact on the free movement of goods, but which are equally good at cleaning up the air, these should be preferred. Okay, so the conclusions are pretty straightforward. Sustainable. Yes. Just 1 second. Sustainable transport and the protection of the alpine area, they are cornerstones of the EU transport policy. What we have seen is there are many actors already active in transalpine transport issues, and if the strategy on the alpine region could do something, it is rather to coordinate the work that is already being done than to duplicate the work. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Mr. Roberto Ferrazza. And please, for 7 minutes.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti. I will do this in Italian if it's okay with the European Commission, because I see most of the people here in the audience are Italians, so I think I will use my mother tongue. Buongiorno a tutti, sono del Ministero dell'Infrastrutture.
Good morning, everybody. I am from the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. It's 9:52. I will finish at 9:59. In 7 minutes, I will tell you what the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure does within the planning of European corridors, and in particular, what my division does, and I will give you insights about the contents, and I will spend a couple of minutes to explain to you why we have been doing a planning in the transport and infrastructure sector, in particular with regard to trans-border connections. The topics that have already been dealt with by previous speakers, in particular Philipp Klaes and Andreas Nägele, concern trans-European network, and you probably know everything about this 10T. Trans-European networks are these, and also European corridors. The slides are not so updated, but what I would like to underline is that Italy participates in this trans-European network through intermodal connections on road, rail, air, and on ports that we have defined in the years 2010 and 2013. That is a part of regulations adopted in 2013, which is Regulation 1315, and then the Regulation 1316, which is the financial regulations with which the European Commission in the next 6 years, 2014-2020, will carry out these 10T. And the trans-European networks have been identified according to their European significance. There are 2 levels. The core networks, those connecting those capital cities, main airports, and main ports. And then there is the comprehensive network, meaning a secondary level network, which is important for the connectivity of territories and regions. And in this macro-regional situation, this is particularly interesting for us. But I'd like to underline that it is very important for a transnational policy, and I represent the point of view of the Italian Ministry of Transport. So it's important not to separate the 2 levels, meaning the core network as an independent entity separate from the comprehensive network. And the core network in Italy is represented by the entire high-speed railway network. So the so-called AVAC network, meaning high-speed railway lines. And so actually I'm talking in a way that is independent from the slides you see. This is part of my strategy, so don't be astonished if what I'm talking about does not relate to the slides that you see. This is part of my strategy. So the core network and comprehensive networks have to be integrated especially in a country like ours, where connectivity issues are very important, especially at the European level. And you know that now we are part of the European semester, so financial laws are no longer approved at a national level as it happened 4 years ago, but they are approved at a European level. And in these days, your European Commission has expressed a known unfavorable opinion with regard to the financial law for 2015. So we are planning the financial resources that will be used in the next few years to solve one of the main problems of Italy, meaning poor growth and poor productivity. Poor growth is caused by many different factors, including logistics, including inadequate transport system. So the first point is to consider core networks and comprehensive networks as a whole. And the second point is that the Italian economy requires an efficient transport system. And among the various European networks, the Italian network is one of the networks suffering from this lack at most. And so this is what is felt in particular by the European Commission. And the European Commission told us in June 2014 that we need to improve our railway interconnectivity with ports. But now you may wonder, so what have ports to do with Alps? Well, in my opinion, there is a lot of interconnection between the two. And I am referring to topics that are typically Italian, but they may also have a European meaning. So Italy is a country that, for its tradition and history, has a large number of ports on its territory. We have about 24, 25 port authorities. I'm not sure whether the 25th port authority has been recognized. And these ports produce less volume compared to what is produced by others. Well, time flies, and I have exceeded 7 minutes. So a lot of our traffic passes through the Alps. And nowadays, this passage is unbalanced because it passes mainly on the road, and it won't be possible in the next few years, also because there is an Alpine Convention. This is the slide that was presented before by Marco Onida. So the Alpine Convention indeed prohibits the construction of further tunnels or further roads. So if we want to be competitive towards our ports, which are our gateways for raw materials and semi-finished goods, we need to have an exit way through the Alps. And indeed, the Alps are not balanced right now in terms of goods, because there is a greater flow from north to south towards Milan, towards Genoa. And this means that the goods come in Italy, and bought in Italy is imported through non-national ports. So statistically, out of 100 containers arriving in Milan, 60 arrive through Rotterdam, and 30 to 40 arrive through Genoa. And this is a concern for us. We have to to correct this unbalance, just like we have to correct trans-border connections. And we are doing this through core and comprehensive networks, because core and comprehensive networks have to be harmonized. We have already mentioned a great project, Lyon, Turin, Gotthard, which is very important for the railway lines. All these projects must be integrated in an effective way and be part of a local transport network. And this is within the task of the Alpine macro-regional strategy. Thank you for the time, and sorry for my delay.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrazza. And now, Mr. Damiano Di Simone.
Visto che avete già la cuffietta, continuo a parlare.
Since you are wearing already the headset for translation, my name is Damiano Di Simone, and I represent Lega Ambiente, but I also represent CIPRA, or CIPRA, which is very important for the Alpine Convention. That is a community that has been the forerunner of this Alpine Region Convention, and this organization has inspired this process of aggregation based on sustainability and protection based on the Alpine Convention, which is an important driver for innovation and common language. And we lack this common language in the Alpine region. And one of the themes related to current crisis and current logistics inefficiency in the Alpine region is indeed the need to implement policies that have to be clearly understood, correcting mistakes done in the past. And I also refer to the TEN network, because an excessive attention to corridors have not underlined the real focus of transport, meaning the nodes. We have focused the attention on other issues, neglecting the real nodes of Alpine transport, meaning the hinterland of the cities. And we need to do this through participated public processes, and Switzerland has given us many good examples in defining transport modalities, transport infrastructures, and ways to finance these through public processes. And this is not the rule in other Alpine states, and this is not the case indeed for Italy, where transport does not have this system. In particular, in Italy, there is no participation and no transparency. And indeed, we may refer to various laws in Italy that did not produce the expected results because it did not consider environmental impact. It prevented public from participating in the process. And all the same, the works have been very expensive and long. And especially with regard to the high-speed railway line, is considered the single model, even when it is not requested. So transparency is fundamental. Priorities have to be set, And I refer to what the previous speakers said. It is clear when we talk about the great policy within the Alpine region, represented by the so-called Zurich-Milan corridor. You may also include all the expansion towards the north and towards the south, but this will become the most important channel of navigation of goods by land. And do you think Italy is aware of the importance of this corridor? Do you think there are investments to make this corridor at the center of logistics policy? No, nothing of all these. And indeed, I saw last year that it was indeed Switzerland that invested very much in enhancing what is a part of the Italian territory. And this is not a balanced cooperation, but it is a situation in which other countries actually take actions because other states do not. And indeed, Italy invests in infrastructures, but Italy does it in other directions. But priorities should be very clear and straightforward. But what we lack is a strategy, a public strategy that has to be discussed. And indeed, the last transport plan was done in 1982. So we live in a plan that was designed in 1982, of course, after Christ. But it's not that since 1982 infrastructures have not been built. For sure, many infrastructures have been built with the so-called logics of Keynesian holes. And indeed, this rationale has already been questioned, as it was done in France with their high-speed railway lines. For sure, we need incentive policies. We talked about taxes and incentives, but these should be used for very defined objectives for certain policies. For instance, the up transit work. We also need renovation works for the Alpine passages, and we would like these to be discussed. Also, to include cap-and-trade systems for freight transport, the so-called Alpine crossing exchange. And this was not discussed enough. So all these forces innovation within the chain of supply in order to have more efficient transport that should be shifted from road to rail. And I would like to conclude saying that the theme of Alpine Convention is a very important topic that should not be used only in theoretical terms. And in the transport protocol, it is stated that countries refrain from constructing any new large capacity roads for transalpine transport. So we mention works that may indeed enhance communication on roads through the Alps. So we should consider whether this principle is included in national policies, because there are many infrastructures that are also built in Veneto or other works that are being built, and we need transparency. because otherwise there might be a conflict against the priority of rail transport. I'm thinking about Fréjus and Gotthard, and I would like to remind you that for both of those works, the priority was safety. So the second road of the tunnel had to be used only for safety reasons. And now in Fréjus, they always talk about a second highway that will be used indeed regularly. And so this means that people were cheated because now this is regularly used. And for sure, this is in conflict with the projects of enhancement of railway infrastructures. So to conclude, I think that an innovative aspect that should be included in mobility is the efficiency in the use of the soil, of the ground. We always refer to efficiency of economic aspects of transport, but we should consider that international data remind us that infrastructures and services related to mobility, mainly on road, account for 40% of urban ground. So we have to be efficient in the use of ground resources, because in this way we may make the use of roads also more convenient under an economic point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Di Simene, and sorry for my wrong pronunciation. And now I give the floor to Mr. Hans-Peter Böhner, Ministry of Interior, Building and Transport from Bavaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, Bavaria got involved very early in developing a macro-regional EU strategy for the Alpine region. So I'm very pleased to show you a few ideas, Bavarian ideas, of harmonizing the objectives of transport on the one hand and environmental protection on the other hand. From the Bavarian point of view, the EU strategy for the Alpine region gives us the opportunity to establish a new form of partnership, first to coordinate different regional activities, and second, to concentrate various financial instruments. As you know, the objective of sustainable further development of mobility and information systems in the Alpine regions can be implemented in the following three topics. First, sustainable and environmental friendly mobility. Second, connected regions, also internet-connected regions. And third, connected society. From the Bavarian point of view, one of the most important issues is the development of railway infrastructure. This means, first of all, the modernization or improvement or building of 3 border-crossing railway routes. Here on slide 1, you see the route between Munich and Kiefersfelden, that means the border of Austria, as the northern part of the Brenner corridor or the access to the Brenner tunnel on the Bavarian side. On the next slide, you see the so-called RBS 38. It's a route from Munich to the east, to Mühldorf, and down to Frohlassing and the border to Austria, to Salzburg. It's very important also for our industry in the area of Burghausen with Wacker and ÖMV. And on the next slide, you see the railway line from Munich to Lindau up to Zurich as a very important connection from the east-west to Switzerland. Indeed, responsible for developing the railway infrastructure is, in Germany, the federal government, not Bavaria. But Bavaria, together with our neighbor states and regions, can take influence on Berlin to develop these important routes due to transport needs. Besides the development of railways, it is important to shift the transport of goods from road to rail. Therefore, we need a very close network of freight villages or freight transport handling plants. That means it's necessary to support these institutions in Bavaria as well as in other Alpine regions. On this slide, yes. On this slide, you see the Bavarian freight transport handling plants all over Bavaria. And I think we are on the way, on the right way. A few weeks ago, the handling plant in Burghausen started working. Ladies and gentlemen, what we also need is a better interoperability and intermodality. So we need innovative technology for vehicles and for instance, traffic control systems. In the past, Bavaria was involved in different innovative projects together with, for instance, Logistik Kompetenzzentrum Prien and other institutions. Let me say a few words about the topic information and services. There are still a lot of deficits regarding border crossing information systems, as well in passenger transport as in goods transport. There's a lot of work to do, for instance, in establishing timetables, tariff information, or ticketing. The working group Transport of the Alpine Convention created the project Alp InfoNet. For this project, the lead partnership was given to Bavaria. The idea is to give efficient cross-border information about public transport as well as about sustainable mobility at one's destination. This means information about ski buses, hotel shuttles, bike rental services, and so on. 13 partners from 5 countries try to bundle existing internet-based transport information systems and touristic information systems with the objective to create an Alpine-wide information network. The EU strategy for the Alpine region could give us the chance to support this idea and to extend this project to the whole Alpine space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now is the time of the debate.
We have Mauro Novello from Interact. I will ask him to launch the debate.
Do you hear me? Oh, yes. Very well. So now it's your time actually to speak. You have heard very many inputs from the speakers, but now it's the time of the audience. So we are now here to collect some of your ideas, maybe also some suggestion, reflection on what has been said by the speakers. If you need clarification from the speakers, this is also your time to make questions. And also have suggestions. Maybe you have your own ideas. I'm sure in this room there are very many things that you would like to say. Would you be asked to say something about the transport in the Alpine area? So my question to you is simply to say a few words, a statement from your side. What do you think it is very important to say? What has been missed? If the priorities that has been identified with the consultation are all there, or if we are missing something. So can you please say your name and the organization you are from, and say your idea about the transport? Are these priorities the priorities? Is there something missing? The initiatives that are there. So please. Anyone who would like to say some? Yes, please. We will have some help with the microphones of my colleagues.
I would like to ask you to be very short because we have really exceeded the time limits. I will be very quick. Sergio Riolon from Veneto region. No question, but a proposal. There is a great absent this morning, but also yesterday afternoon, and I am referring to the Alpine population, to people living in the Alps. So it's very good to talk about freight transport with less pollution. It's very good to talk about tourists reaching the Alps with less pollution. But the focus of a macro-regional strategy for the Alpine region should be what can we do in order to make people continue living in the Alps. This is what we lack. So I ask that in the priorities you should discuss about internal transport system so that the Alps may still be inhabited, because indeed the depopulation term is a very important term, and this term was mentioned only once yesterday from the Councillor of Friuli Venezia Giulia, and I believe that also transport should be considered in order to understand how better services can be provided to the people living in the Alps.
So an important point we have missed so far. So next one, please. Please say your name and organization.
Buongiorno a tutti. Sergio Strobelt, Regione Lombardia.
My name is Sergio Strobelt from the region of Lombardy. There is another missing point. I didn't hear about the cycle mobility, and in the region of Lombardy this year we have approved the new cycle mobility plan. So thinking about the bicycle as a means of transport for daily mobility and also for long distances. And for sure, this topic should be supported also with economic resources. I know there are few economic resources, but quite often it would be enough to have limited funds to support these. And indeed, especially in Lombardy, there is a gap compared to the rest of Europe. And I think we need to support the infrastructures for the bike mobility. And this is a part of the transport plan for the region of Lombardy.
I will take another input from the audience and then give the floor maybe for a feedback from the speakers. So if anyone, please.
Thank you. Emeline Aliou from the French Permanent Representation in Brussels. I just wanted to react to one of the elements that Philippe Claes mentioned in his presentation, the idea of the regional car sharing, because I found it interesting. It's true in this time of budget constraints, this can be an interesting, modern, cheap way of improving mobility in the region. And also, given that actually transit is only 8%, as we saw in the initial presentation, so there's a lot, of course, of internal flow. So maybe also a way to improve or facilitate regional car sharing in the area could be an interesting idea. And I was wondering, maybe in the consultation, what sort of concrete suggestions were made on this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we give just very few sentences if you have any feedback to give on these points that were raised by the speakers. Any of you would like to add something on population, on focusing on the population? First point, second point on the cycle transport, and that is missing, and last point on the regional car sharing. Anything that you would like to give a feedback?
No, the ideas that are suggested are interesting and are appearing in the consultation. So car sharing is indeed one of the ideas. There are also a few ideas that were suggested in the consultation around use of cycle. The accent in the consultation was more on cross-border, because if a project has to be submitted in the macro region, it should have a macro-regional dimension. But there were indeed a few ideas submitted combining the use of cycle with train, and also around organized tours for tourism, where you could have something organized, visiting many places in the region, putting your bike on the train, combined with ecotourism and so on. So this idea appears. Of course, as the lady is suggesting, it's nice to have an idea. It's challenging how to transform this idea in a concrete project. But this is the next step.
Thank you very much. We have only two persons that were asking to speak, one there and one here. And then I'll give the floor back to the speakers.
Giulia Barbieri, Pronom Blanc, Comitato Internazionale per la Protezione
International Committee for the Protection of Mont Blanc. I have lived the entire history of this tunnel from the accident until present days. And I would like to say that the situation of the population of the place is not taken into consideration, especially the people living in Chamonix. And they are always these trucks passing through the tunnels, a great pollution, and indeed there is a great protest on the part of the population of the area. And I believe these should be taken into consideration. So considering how people live there in these areas, and so of course people will never leave Chamonix. I think so, because the presence of Chamonix is so strong in history, and the same applies to Courmayeur. But the same associations participating in these organizations and French associations, and there is one entitled to the protection of the Mont Blanc site, and they make huge demonstrations giving a lot of value to bikes, but there is no consideration on the part of the European Union, not even for the protection of Mont Blanc, because there is no European law in this regard.
Over there, you wanted to speak? No. So here.
Thank you. Ugo Poli for the Central European Initiative. Our regional international organization comprises 18 states that are part of all macro-regions. What we see in our commitment to bridge the experiences of the macro-regional strategies implementation is that even if it is very important to mobilize the attention of stakeholders to preserve the responsibility of the states and national level institutions in the harmonization of planning the territory and the resources of the sectional macro-regional parts of Europe. The issue of cohesion through macro-regional effective activities. In our experience, by implementing European projects that are quite large, and half of them are related to transport, we see the priority of the problem of harmonizing regulations and methodologies in the international transport issues, cross-border in particular. This Friday in Vienna we will have the final conference of the project across SEE, including also Slovenia, Austria and Italy as part of the EUSALP strategy that I suggest you to have a look on the website at least, if not coming and taking part in that conference. But the follow-up of this step I think, should be to incentivize the transnational joint venturing in the management of transport and logistics of international level, which is instead quite crazily, in a mood of 19th century, considered as a national strategic and individual interest beyond of our common European dimension. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is another input here, very short one, please.
Yes. Franziska Sielka, University of Erlangen. I rather have a question than a statement, so it's very short. I would like to ask, as there are two pillars which also have some contradictory ambitions, transport and environment, how the strategy can help also to combine and interlink the different ambitions and projects. So how is this going to be discussed between the two pillars? Are there any plans?
Thank you very much. The feedback, and then, so the floor is yours. Anyone who would like to give a feedback?
Maybe some feedback indeed. Regarding the protection of the Mont Blanc and the position of the population, I think the position of the population is very central in the whole problematic of transport. Transport is a need. It's a need for transit for the whole region. It's a need for the inhabitants, and we have seen that the majority of the transport is internal. Transport is also a need for tourism, and tourism is an essential element of the economy of the Alps. But of course, transport is generating noise, generating pollution, which is very harmful, particularly in the Alps, given the geographical consideration. So I think, indeed, if there is an accent on intermodal transfer, on e-car, on e-mobility, on car sharing, on bicycle, and so on, the background of all these initiatives are indeed to combine two antagonistic needs. One is to have better transport, better communication, and we come back in the second session on how could digital communication replace part of it. That's for later. But on the other hand, also to make the life of the people in the region more sustainable, more attractive. This is really critical in the whole pillar. It's not just to make better transport, it's to make it more sustainable and more acceptable for the people in the region. The second intervention about trying to promote international joint venturing in combined transport, I think this is indeed really critical. In Europe, we still have mainly national railway operators, and this is, of course, some handicap to really promote and move towards combined transport on a long distance. So the idea of joint venturing, indeed, is something that would be highlighted.
Thank you, Philip. I would like to see if the speakers also have a flash before we close this session, very, very short, on the different questions and inputs which have been made before we go to the next subsession. I just wanted to reply very briefly to the lady that put the last question. Indeed, we are not absolutely pushing any clustering and working in isolation from the different pillars. That is also the new, let's say, approach of European funds which seek integration between the different sectors and the different even departments working on sectors. If you look at the new funds today, are much more integrated across sectors. Of course, it takes time to achieve that, but our idea, certainly from DG Regio, is absolutely not to go on transport in isolation from environment or innovation, but the other way around, to try to have as much as possible an integrated way towards this macro region. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense. But I would like to see if there is a feedback, very short, on everything which has been said by the speakers before we close this session. Damiano, want to start?
Sì, sulla sulla questione pilastri.
With regard to the pillars, transport and environment, that are contrasting, of course, there is a conflict between the two, but there is such a low performance under an environmental point of view in transport that we can only improve the situation, but indeed we can improve the performance of the system and the efficiency of logistics. We might think about innovation that could be indeed carried out within the transport, within the tariff and toll and tax systems. That is a hindrance to free movement of people, because there are tariffs that are completely different. So really, there is a great improvement we can accomplish, and we should do this according to a precise willingness and strategy. There will still be a conflict, but we can improve in this respect. And with regard to Roland and concerning the population, I have no correct answer, but I believe that somehow we can provide some answers to the Alpine population. And I don't know if the macro-regional strategy is the right strategy. So we think about 60, 70 million inhabitants in the Alpine region, and indeed there isn't enough representation within this region, but for sure we can improve in these. We've developed policies in the cities. We may think of what Milan has done, the city of Milan has done with new ways of transport, carpooling, car sharing. So far, these applications have been developed for highly demographic areas, but I believe that this can be done also in other areas.
For those who still have questions, there's another chance of debate at the end of the next session, so don't worry, you can still be able to put your questions. Ferrazza, Negele, Börner, if you have 1 minute, but really 1 minute flash on the different inputs, choose the message you want to say. Don't be selective, please.
Sì, non vorrei dare l'impressione di dare punti di vista discordanti. In realtà stiamo dicendo le stesse cose.
So we are actually saying the same things, also with different points of view. So transport is not in contrast with environment. This should not be the way. We should consider project in a serious way, and I am referring to the transport works that are part of national policies that are carried out also with the participation of other territories, as we have been doing for some years in the consulted planning of infrastructures. We have very good examples, such as in the Brenner tunnel. That is an example of work that has been done for several years. We have excavated in Italy 27 kilometers tunnel, and there has been no opposition on the part of provinces, on the part of territories, and there is a great interest that this is completed because benefits are understood, less traffic, less trucks, and more efficiency. So the environmental issue is a central issue and is absolutely recognized also within the transport topic, and there is a space for improvement and space for cooperation. But what I was trying to say this morning is that we should think of transport as a fundamental component of our economic life. It is a micro component, is a microeconomy component that has an impact on the entire national revenues and in terms of competitiveness and costs in logistics. And the Italian production system cannot afford this anymore. So in other words, we need a more efficient transport system, and this has been underlined several times, and this should be based more on sustainable transport modes. I have referred the connection between ports and railway lines. So ports as a gateway and trans-border connections as a way to connect Italy, a system to connect Italian economy to European economy.
Yeah, I think an important issue is money or budget. So we have to find a way for financial support of these alpine activities, although, as I know, it's not a top-down process, but a bottom-up process. Nevertheless, without money, you can realize ideas. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if you want to conclude and launch the next debate.
Thank you. In my program, I can read the second part of the session starting at 10:20. We are not in time, on time. Now, before opening the second session, which is dedicated to e-connectivity, let me introduce the four following speakers, and I thank the speaker of the...
Let's start, and then we introduce when after the beginning of the...
Okay.
Yes, so we will do Claes and me, and then we call them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We profit by making the introduction, and at the same time, after the introduction, the Chairman will call the next speaker so that we gain a little bit of time. I'll try to cut most of what I have to say for this introduction. Basically, we are now, and here arrivo alla risposta alla domanda di Riolon.
And I would like to answer Riolon questions. These are the highways we would like to build.
This is what now we want to make in order to allow people in the Alps, as Mr. Riolon said, to live, to study, to remain there. We're not talking about physical infrastructure, we're talking about broadband and e-connectivity infrastructure, which of course does not have the same environmental consequences as physical infrastructure has. I just give you very, very shortly 2 or 3 facts and figures. Today we have the fixed broadband coverage in Europe is very, very high, but this is very slow in speed, is between 1 and 2 megabytes per second, whereas the so-called next generation access is still developing and is still very low in certain countries. But more than these figures, what is important is that there is a big difference between cities and rural areas. There is on this I will not say much because there is a digital agenda from the European Union on that, which aims at bringing broadband for everybody by 2013, basic broadband, which has been achieved, but also to move quickly towards 2020 with the next generation access. And we have a digital agenda of the Alpine Convention, which will also be the object of one of the speakers, to make sure that this is connected to, in particular, local development in order to increase competitiveness and social inclusion. And here we come to the topics which were mentioned by Mr. Riolon. This is just a graph that shows the very clear linear correlation between competitiveness and accessibility to broadband. With this said, I will put the same questions. What can a macro-regional strategy help in order to fill the gap that we have in connectivity? What are the most urgent measures that we have to take? And how can private-public partnership be encouraged? Because, of course, here is a problem where the private sector is not investing because it's not profitable. So we have to make a partnership public-private in order to make sure that something is done. With that, I would ask Philippe Claes to say something about the results of the consultation on this specific topic, and then we go into the next session.
Thank you, Marco. Essentially, I will highlight what came out of the consultation. I already mentioned to you the priorities, and you remember that although digital connection was suggested as strategic priority number 3, it came as number 2 in the consultation. Which are the main challenges that were suggested by the people in the consultation? A very high demand for increase the ICT connectivity and awareness, expressed in a different way. So the accent is not just on connectivity, so building broadband and so on, but also awareness. The people being prepared to use and to work with ICT. Secondly, develop the physical temporal accessibility of services of general interest. So this is more focused on the content. Services of general interest can be education, can be administration, can be health, can be tourism, for whatever needs of information the people may have. Third challenge, which is linked to the second one, is to integrate the information side for tourism and culture. For the moment, you may have sites in a particular region or in a particular country, but maybe for tourists it is more interesting to have something covering the whole region, because when they travel, they not necessarily just remain in one of the involved countries. Concrete actions of examples or projects suggested in the consultation. The number 1 was really roll out of fast broadband access in the rural mountain areas, which remain problematic because it's not profitable for the telecom operators to do it by themselves. And there comes also the idea of satellite, on which my colleague will speak in more detail. On the content, develop e-administration and services, develop digital competence in manual jobs, e-learning, a unified information system or smart communities around themes like culture, tourism, traffic, weather, so all information needs that may interest and the inhabitants of the region and the tourists coming to that region. There is the project Alp Infonet, and that was mentioned already. Also the ideas of organize or suggest itineraries combining culture, tourism, enogastronomy, which is typical in the region, with an integrated schedule, so combining the places to eat or to visit with organized public transport if possible, and also an idea about numerizing the cultural heritage. So this is the outcome of the consultation. Thank you.
Okay, now it's a good time to introduce the four following speakers. Mr. Robert Henkel, DG Connect from the European Commission. Mr. Paolo Bertolino from Union Camere Piemonte. Mr. Markus Reiterer. There is a mistake.
Sorry, there is a change. It's Mrs. Sivona Vrevc replacing Markus Reiterer.
I'm sorry, madam. And finally, Christian Saletmeyer, Alpine Space Program. And I give the floor to Mr. Henkel.
7 minutes,
7 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Marco and Philip has explained the horizontal and importance and the fundamental importance for socio-economic development of broadband. Now we are looking for my slides. Okay. I will not speak longer about importance. It's obviously that broadband is a horizontal subject, and it's obviously that also broadband can help to better service for the people, e-learning, e-health, but also to reduce the pollution. If you don't need a car to go to the doctor can analyze your medical state at home. This is a big progress also for the pollution. Very short, I will explain you what is the strategy of the Commission to close the digital divide, and there are three elements: the regulatory initiatives, the policy initiatives, and financial support. Last example for the regulatory initiatives are the Cost Reduction Directive, which was adopted in April 2014. The idea of this cost reduction is that for the explanation and expansion of broadband networks, you're using already existing infrastructure. For example, many water supplier, energy supplier have already glass fiber under the solid, and they have empty ducts, and you can use it to build up your local network, a better network in your region, and you can reduce the cost by this action up to 30%, because 80% of the cost for the broadband deployment is excavation costs, also the building of the glass fiber network under the solid. Another instrument, very important, are the financial support for the deployment for broadband networks. There are two principal instruments. CEF, this is more financial instrument. This means credits, loans, guarantees by European Investment Bank, and the European Structural Investment Funds you know very good, I think. The idea of the loans and credit is that often local banks have no experience with ICT networks or with broadband, and so have problems with risk, and you can reduce investment risk by guarantees by European Investment Bank, for example, and so the local bank are ready to give you credits to build up your own network, local network. This is the main idea behind CEF. The second element you know is the structure funds. The last period was not so far developed. The structure funds concerning broadband, only 2.3 billion were allocated to broadband. But this changed in the next period clearly. Now we have around 6 billion euro for broadband deployment and 70 billion for ICT generally. It means also for the application. I think my next speaker will speak more detailed about the application of broadband. It means there's a real substantial increase using structure funds for broadband. We also making information and technical advice policy. You can get. We published this September, a broadband investment guide, who helps each mayor, each local authority to build up and building up their own network. This means that you find it's like a menu. You can go through the menu and starting with the planning of a network, with analyzing of a demand, decision on which kind of technology you will use, financial models, business planning, all is inside this investment guide, to help the local authorities to plan their own network. This is also published in the European Broadband Portal. It's the most important distributing instrument for information on broadband policy, but not only on the European level, also on the local level and country level, about the contact person in your country, in your region, who can help you to build up your own network in your region, and also showing best practice experience in the different countries and in your region. We have for each country best practice experience, means you can learn from your colleagues in your own country how to build up in rural areas broadband network. The second part of my speech is on satellite broadband, because satellite broadband has many qualities which are unique and single, because here in this case the infrastructure is already built. The satellites are in the orbit. You must not build up you can get this service tomorrow. It's very easy to handle. And the modern two-way communication services, the broadband service via satellite, reach between 6 and 22 megabits download and between 1 and 7 megabits upload. This is high-quality, basic broadband. But they're now going on the satellite industry to reach also the next generation network limit of 30 megabit download. This means in the future you can use satellites also to reach the second target of the European agenda. And the volume of the traffic is between 3 and 50 megabit per month. And so we have very quick shared medium, but it's very useful, especially in very remote areas of the Alpine regions and on the Alps. And for this, you can also do satellite voucher scheme, because the monthly fee is the same as each broadband service in a big town, or it's not different. But at the beginning, we have to pay for the modem antenna, including installation. This means around 400, 500 euro. And in some poor remote areas, the people have not the money. And for this, you can use a satellite voucher scheme. The public authority offers a voucher to the householders and companies who cannot get basic broadband. And this voucher can be used to pay the service of providers for the installation of the modem and antenna. And this kind of voucher can also stimulate the take-up of broadband, because we have a real demand problem also regarding broadband, because in rural areas, many people up to now don't understand what they can do with internet. For example, I mentioned e-learning, e-government, e-health. Many services also to reduce pollution, taking the car to the next administration place. And the most developed three-step model to finance this is a multi-provider approach, and this is very reduced administrative procedure, and the structure is very clear. At the beginning, there's a public authority who maps and analyzes the coverage in this region, in the local region, applies perhaps for the funds, either regional funds or agri funds, and then selected in a public call the providers which fulfilling the technical and state aids conditions, and make agreements with these providers who can offer this, who can use the voucher to build up the satellite service. And the citizen can get the serial number identification and take the voucher to pay this service provider, and this will be again used by the provider to get the money back from public authorities. This is very simple and clear structure, and normally also concerning state aids is under the de minimis regulation, or under the new block exception. Block exception means up to 70 million euro. We have not made an own application to the DG competition, and so this is a very good, pragmatic, quick solution for really wide areas, remote areas in the Alps. And for more information, you can use this connections, Broadband for All, where you find a map with also your country. You click on your country and find your providers in your countries who can tomorrow bring you the service, the satellite service at home. A very quick and solution for the base supply up to 22 megabit download. And if you would like to have more information on the voucher scheme, You find it also on our broadband portal or on the ZEBA project. ZEBA project is also a project we financed by the Commission, who developed the satellite voucher scheme. It is a network of remote areas, authorities, European-wide, who close the digital gap by satellite broadband. Thank you very much for your attention.
And now I give the floor to Mr. Paolo Bertolino for 7 minutes, please.
Grazie. Approfitto della traduzione, parlo
Thank you. I will speak in Italian since there is a simultaneous translation. So the topic of this morning round table is certainly connected with regard to transport infrastructures and immaterial infrastructures such as e-connectivity. Under the point of view of those representing the enterprise world, it is fundamental to underline that in our economy, the use of internet connection is becoming a must, a primary commodity, and I believe that the efforts that should be made by the institutions in order to disseminate this e-connectivity in the fastest way possible and to allow also mountain and rural areas to have this connectivity, this is very important so that an economic activity may be carried out in order to live in those areas and to continue learning in those areas. And for those living in these mountain areas, it becomes extremely important, not only for the environment, but also for the economic development that is based on tourism development, which still need to be further enhanced in our areas. We know that major providers do not invest in those areas, so I believe that the possibility for the public sector to support and to encourage operators to go to those areas is fundamental. And the public sector should also try to aggregate the demand in a wider area so that the supply may be attractive for private operators. But in my opinion, we should always consider the respect for those areas, meaning that all innovative technologies should respect environment and people living there, and we should not pollute those areas too much. We should give everybody the possibility to access internet connection, but we also have to respect those areas. So I wouldn't like that from a Wi-Fi free concept, we may arrive to a free from Wi-Fi concept, meaning that we should balance the typical features of certain areas that are also attracting the tourists for those specificities. And then a general consideration, I believe that this macro-regional alpine strategy is fundamental, but I would like to see that our authorities managing European funds in our regions should sit around a table and should plan investments of these European funds in a coordinated way, and only in this way we may start talking about a macro-regional strategy, and also in the view of e-connectivity. I believe that investing in innovation, research, and new methods is a duty for all of us. And if we do it in a coordinated way, this will bring about benefits to the entire macro area.
Mr. Bertolino. And now, Mrs. Simona Vrevich.
Thank you. Thank you for the floor. Yes, my name is Simona Vrevich, and I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the Permanent Secretariat of the Alpine Convention, and I'm really pleased to be here. At this occasion, I have to apologize the absence of the Secretary General because, unfortunately, he got ill. But talking about the issue of e-connectivity and the importance of this issue for the implementation of the objectives of the Alpine Convention, I think it's very clear that we all know about the basic infrastructure character e-connectivity in general, in terms of services, knowledge, and access to the intranet represent for today's society. And this is also valid for the area of the Alps, obviously. We have also heard from our previous speakers that there are many instruments available to allow for this access. But still, we are facing, in particular in more remote areas of the Alps, a digital divide, a substantial one, one which almost limits, in some areas, the development. One, if it would be existent, could eventually address issues like depopulation, aging, and brain drain. So, to address these problems and also to fulfill the general objectives of the Alpine Convention, like mentioned in the Article 2 of the Framework Convention, where we are aiming at respecting, preserving, and promoting the cultural and social independence of the population in the Alps, or where we are striving for guaranteeing a good living standard. So, in order to fulfill these objectives, it was a kind of a logical consequence that the Alpine Convention dealt with the issue of the digital divide. And I can be actually proud that during the Italian presidency, a first report on these issues were prepared, or has been prepared, with a quite systematic approach, analyzing the current situation, putting on the table what are the issues at stake, and also proposing solutions. And with these proposed solutions, they actually address many of the objectives of the protocols, like the protocol on spatial planning, which in particular refers to economic and social integration of the people in the Alps, or raises the expectation to organize or to implement measures for assuring sufficient level of employment for the local population. All these issues are extremely relevant, and I'm actually quite happy that in the public consultation, this objective popped up not as the third priority, but the second one. It confirms actually that these problems are at the heart of us all. In terms of what can the macro-regional strategy do in better deploying those possibilities, I think is that we really need a coordinated action. And this was specifically emphasized by the previous speaker, because we have the available instruments, we have the, let's say, the necessary legal backgrounds, but still the development does not reach the objectives we have set to each other. And I think that this could be the added value. And the second point, which is important, is money. We know that there is no additional money for the implementation of the macro-regional strategy, but by better steering it and agreeing on common objectives, so that really all countries in this area try to reach these objectives. I think we have a very firm political commitment, and I'm really happy to offer also the contribution or the knowledge selected selected by the Alpine Convention up till now to feed into this process. I can also maybe convey the message that the Alpine Conference, which took place a couple of days ago, confirmed on a political level the commitment to contribute to this process, to be involved in the preparation of the strategy and the action plan, but also to participate in the future governance structure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Christian Saletmeyer, Alpine Space Program.
Thank you very much. I could start where my two speakers previously to me ended almost, or where I wanted to end. What can the European strategy for the Alpine region do to promote connectivity? And I think it is to coordinate and to promote, and also to coordinate funds. This is what I wanted to end, but it's fitting better as a beginning. We were fairly surprised from the Alpine Space Program to see that e-connectivity is such a high-ranking topic in the development of the 3 pillars and of the future action plans. Because when we did our analysis for the new program, it didn't pop up as a major issue for transnational cooperation. Maybe this is because the program has other objectives and is a program and not a strategy. But when you go deeper into the analysis, you will find out that also for the activities and for the priorities of the future Alpine Space Program, ICT, e-connectivity plays a crucial and important role. It is a key enabling technology. It plays a role for innovation. It plays a role for low carbon strategies. If you think of car sharing, for instance, and it plays a role to make the Alps a livable area, and these are the 3 big priorities for the Alpine Space Program in future. It is important to see what we in the Alpine Space Program have done previously, and what are the results of the projects, and how could these results probably be taken as examples or as a kind of bits for thought for future development in that kind. 2 projects that I want to specifically mention. The one is the project Access, which dealt with services of general interest and how to promote them and how to bring them into remote areas. So this project had some ideas and made virtual marketplaces, for instance, promoted car sharing, for instance, and all this needs ICT in the background and as an enabling technology. The other project I would like to refer to is Elias, which is a network of 12 hospitals, smaller hospitals in the Alpine area, and which used this network to exchange diagnosis, to get a second look on a diagnosis, which is often difficult when you are in a remote hospital and do not have the expert at hand. So this is also creating demand, and especially with hospitals and with these things, I think it's clear that it must be high speed and high resolution access to internet. So the Alpine Space Program projects could show how to create demand, and I think this is important. Also, if there and when there are a lot of technologies available, but it's still the demand that must be created. Examples can be taken to show how to create demand also in remote areas, how to implement then internet access, maybe then how to attract private investors to follow this demand. I think for the future, we think that we will have in our program also projects showing how internet, how ICT, how the use of ICT also in remote areas can bring not only technology there, but can also improve the standard of living and can improve the quality of life there. So it's still an important technology. It's an enabling technology, not only in a technical sense, but it's also in a sense for quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Onida, time for exchange.
Yeah. I start a couple of words just to thank all the speakers because they have been keeping the time this time, so I'm really happy. We have, Mauro, it's 11:17, we have time until 11:45, so that means we have almost half an hour, which means we can have a good debate and we can also catch up on some of the questions which were cut in the first part because it was too short time there. So please, Mauro, the floor is yours.
So the rules are the same. Basically, we want you to speak up. We want you to give us feedback, reaction to what has been said by the speakers, maybe things that misses still, that you didn't hear, or maybe your solutions to the issues that were raised. So anybody? Can you please pass on the micro here? And then...
Good morning to everybody. Elisabetta Reia from Friuli Venezia Giulia region. I would like to thank all the speakers and participants for the contribution already given. I'm continuing just to underline some aspects. We have participated to the consultation as a region, Italian region on the border with Austria and Slovenia and a couple of kilometers from Croatia, and also giving vision and priority or the different pillars. As far as concerned the pillar 2, we would like to stress the importance of cross-border investments, especially concerning the railway system. So we are a little bit yes, we are considering some representation that Mr. Clay outlined concerning the line Trieste-Ljubljana. Is not what our region, for instance, express in the terms of reinforcing the connection between the north-south direction. So especially we have an experience developing the Interreg program Italy-Austria. Is a pilot project Micotra to improve the connection between Italy and Austria involving the railways operator. So it's an agreement between the OBB, the Austrian railway, and the Italian railway. And we would like to capitalize this in order to extend this experience. If it's possible, for sure, in all the area with a macro-regional impact, the important to also work on the soft measure. So harmonization of time table, in order to allow the really free movement of the passengers. In this sense, it requires agreement between railways operators, so it's not something so automatic. In this sense, we would like to stress not only big investment, we are aware of the importance to connect the core investment and comprehensive investment, but also this kind of project that could really give an input to the harmonization of the system. So this is something that we would like to really stress, and there is an interest from the Italian region to support this approach also in sustainable terms. So sustainable mobility and integration with the other pillars. Thank you.
Thank you. I have an input here, please.
Hello, I'm Cortesi from the Italian Cyclist Federation. I would like to stress that cycling mobility, as well as cycle tourism, don't have just a local relevance, but also there is Eurovelo, which is an international European-wide cycle network, transnational and transborder cycle network made up of 14 transnational routes for overall about 18,000 kilometers. And this network has been embedded in the Regione Lombardia regional cycling plan, which was quoted this morning. And also there's a reference to Eurovelo in the rules in the rules quoted this morning about TNTT number 1315. Therefore, it would be perfectly consistent to funding Eurovelo network within the cycling CEF funding. And the economic value of cycle tourism was also estimated in a study commissioned by the European Parliament, published in 2012, and it was estimated for about 44 billion euros per year, which is, to get a figure, about the same value of the cruise industry. Therefore, I would stress also the attention on cycling mobility and cycle tourism. And also the Micotra experience quoted just before has also been implemented to ease the transport of bicycles on trains to serve the transnational cycle route between called Ciclovia Alpe Adria Radweg, between Salzburg and Grado in Italy.
Thank you very much. As you see, we are also talking about the previous session, but this is good because we didn't have time. So any inputs also on the previous session? There is one here before and then one there. Please.
Ljubčo Todorovski, University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. When you were talking about e-connectivity, you stressed a lot about building infrastructure and broadband access. But we also, in the Alpine region and wider in Europe, we have also this issue of fragmentation of different data sources and websites. And this fragmentation goes in different directions. It goes even, so it's fragmented even below the level of the national sources, but we also have regional fragmentation, we have language fragmentation, and then we have also target group fragmentations. So I think a big challenge here is to provide means and support for bridging this fragmentation, for establishing integrated data sources. I think that's something that is not to be solved by individual developers of ICT solutions, but that's something which should be done intra-regional, and some support should be provided in those terms. in Alpine region and elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Last one, and then...
My question is very simple and spontaneous. Probably this is not the right place to put it. But anyway, I'm the scientific consultant for ecomuseums in the Alpine region. In this case, Valle Spluga and Val Varrone. So we know very well the difficulties. And my question is, how can we, small entities, help you in defining, in locate some actions, and how can you help us, small entities, but we, anyway, we are very present in the areas, but our difficulties is to participate of European, debate. So my question, I repeat, is very simple. How can you help us, and how can we give sense and ideas about the actions to carry on? Because, I'm attending this meeting, but I find there is a great distance between you, representatives of authorities in Europe, and the small entities. But we are there, but anyway, they are small, but very, good examples of conduct and so on.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm Edo Brichetti.
Thank you. So we have another one. How many do we still have in the room? 1, 2, 2. Okay.
My name is Erminio Quartiani from Italian Alpine Club. I have a real question to make, and I'd like to know from the various stakeholders and from the various institutions who will have to use the funds, available funds. I would like to know from them whether there is a common orientation so that available funds can be used in the internal mountain areas for the benefit of mountain population. So what I mean is that within the Alpine macro-regional strategy, there must be a new agreement between mountains and cities in a vertical sense. So resources from cities to mountains and also geographically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have another one, and then we give the floor to the speakers to give a feedback.
Yes, my English is not very good. So
my English is not good, and I will speak in French. I will be brief. I work for the Economic Social Council of Rhône-Alpes, and we're very happy that e-connectivity has become a second priority in terms of macro-regional strategy for the Alpine region. But on the other hand, on the basis of our observations, we see that in spite of all the efforts at the level of the public institutions, regions, states, and European Fund, all these efforts do not allow for a good coverage under a quantitative point of view in the mountain areas. And we also would like that this macro-regional strategy may reinforce the partnership between the public and private sector and involve operators so that it is possible to manage the issue between densely urban areas and rural areas.
The question was about, as far as I understand, these collaboration between public and private, and also how these flows that were mentioned also from the previous speaker, flows between dense metropolitan areas and a rural area, a peripheral area, can be enhanced by the strategy. So maybe if you can touch upon all these points, the speakers, please, Marco.
Thank you, Mauro. I would just add one very short question for Mr. Bertolino, because in his speech he mentioned the need for coordination in the programming of EU funds And I would like to know exactly what he meant. He's meant coordination between the regions or coordination within the national. So when you reply, please, if you could give any insight on that too. So Mauro, if you agree, I would just ask the speakers to pick up the questions they think they have something to say, to be short, because then we have time for other questions. I have myself some answer to some questions which I think were specifically addressed to the Commission, in particular the question on the distance between small local level and Europe, and the question by Mr. Quartiani. So I'm happy to take those in the end. But first I would like to see if, maybe starting from ladies first, given that we had a really gender problem in this workshop, and I'm really happy that we have at least one woman speaking. Maybe Simone, if you want to start.
Yeah, thank you. Let me confirm that ICT infrastructure is also very important for the gender issue. It enables women to better participate at work, so I'm really glad to be here as a woman today. I would like maybe to reply to the question on the data sources. Why? Because you may know that one of the objectives of the Alpine Convention is also to facilitate data exchange, to create, if possible, databases, but we often, we have, like you mentioned, a lot of problems of doing so because there are legal and traditional obstacles because different institutions do not cooperate. But I think that the macro region is eventually a window of opportunity. But it's a window of opportunity also because at the EU level, this initiative to go for open data sources, to open the access to the data which is collected or bought by public funds is stronger and stronger. So I'm quite positive, and I thank you for the proposal you made.
Yes, concerning the funds, I would like to stress that nearly all 7 member states inside of the Alpine region has reserved millions of funds for broadband deployment, partly in DG Regio programs or DG Agri programs, also different funds you can use. And so also for the application of broadband, as the ICT services and culture reasons, nearly all of the members have money already inside the structure funds reserved for these applications, and you can applicate in your national country to use the money. In addition, I mentioned this CEF instrument. This means to get credit and loans and guarantees by European Investment Bank. This is for bigger projects, minimum 20 or 10 million euro. Then you get money directly from the investment bank, or you get guarantees for your local bank. And so you can build up your network by long-term credits. This means between 10 and 20 years. This is a problem of the financial market. You know it's that today all enterprises have a very short term thinking to get the dividend after 4 or 5 years, and this is the reason because the big communication enterprises are not investing in rural areas. But there are many small and medium-sized enterprises who can build up your network in your region, and if they get this credits by the bank or guarantees by the bank. Concerning the financial aspect, coming back to the local identity, the small identities and small entities, I think the voucher scheme, satellite voucher scheme, is a typical example where very small communities, little villages, or little farmer on the Alps can get connected by the investment of 400 euro. And then you have connection between, I told you, between 6 and 22 megabit download. This is a very simple way. And if they have not the money, then can use state aids, because the voucher scheme is fulfilling the state aid rules of the Commission, and it's not in contrast. Is totally in line with state aid rules. And I mentioned also especially the de minimis rule. This means if it is under 200,000 euro, the state aid, you must not make any notification to the DG Competition. And the same, I mentioned the block exception of 70 million, also up to 70 million, you must not make an own notification. You can use this kind of state aids if you show, fulfill the state aid rules, but it's not so difficult in such areas where nobody else is investing in broadband networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. Bertolino.
Grazie, ma innanzitutto volevo rispondere alla domanda.
Thank you very much. I would like to answer the question related to the involvement of local communities in the planning. And I think there isn't enough capability on the part of our institutions to listen, and if in wide areas and wide metropolitan areas, it is hard to establish a listening process. I don't think this is the same in mountain and rural areas, because these are smaller areas with fewer inhabitants, and so it's our duty to listen to their demands. And I believe that Europe will be built when we will pass from a Europe of member states to Europe of member regions. And when I think of action plans, I think of regional action plans. I don't see in my house authorities sitting with the French neighbors talking about opportunities for everybody. And I'd like to make an example. We have built an AlpMed association between Ronal, Pacara, Liguria, Valle d'Aosta unions. And we did this because Europe told us that there was the European Group of Territorial Cooperation. But in the planning 2014-2020, we haven't seen any economic incentive to enhance the development of these groups. And I believe this is fundamental if we really want to build a macro-regional strategy for the Alpine region. So we should all make additional efforts to have a confrontation with those living behind the Alps, so that Alps can be a common hinge in the construction of a common European objective.
Yeah, if a macro-regional strategy tries to better align funds, this strategy is probably some months or a year too late to greatly, in a big extent, influence the programming of the 2014 to 20 programs. But nevertheless, I think many ideas have already gone into that program, and the macro-regional strategy is something that should last over the next 6 or 7 years. So I think it will be a question how to show in the next years, also with projects of the action plan, how to better argue for being better respected in the future programs. Nevertheless, I think especially for the question of bringing internet into remote areas in many of the programs, it was already said by one of my colleagues here, in many programs quite considerable amounts were reserved, and I think it needs to be taken. But what is not to be forgotten is that bringing the technology into wherever needs also to be accompanied by qualification, because having the internet is one thing and using it as as I said before, to create a demand, to create an economic service is another thing.
Thank you very much, Christian. I would like to give, Mauro, if you allow me, reply to two questions. First of all, this issue, how can we, very nice question, how can you small entities help us and how can we help you? Well, first of all, it's true, the distance is quite big between the small local level and the European institution. But don't forget that the strategy is not ours. The strategy is not a strategy. It's called the strategy of the EU, but it's not a strategy of the European Commission. The EU, it's you. The strategy is the strategy of the territory. It starts, in particular, the EUSALP, more than the other strategy, is a bottom-up exercise, so it starts with the territory. And your input, of course, it has to go all the way up where it is necessary, but it's not so important that there is, in fact, the dialogue is organized. This conference is mainly organized to have a dialogue, and the public consultation, which lasted 3 months, was precisely for having this dialogue. But it's not necessary that there is always a constant connection between the small local level and the Brussels level, because the strategy does not belong to Brussels in the end. The Brussels makes its blueprint and makes sure that the strategy is facilitated. It has a say in helping cooperation, but the strategy in the first place is yours. Per Quartiani rispondo in italiano perché mi sembra così doveroso.
For the question to Quartiani, I will answer in Italian. The strategy is used to define the priorities. We are in this phase. We are in the consultation phase to define priorities that will be integrated in the action plan. There is the battle to be fought. If the priorities will be to give funds to mountain populations, that will be one of the pillars. So we will fight the battle there. Now we are in the consultation phase, and once the priorities have been defined, then how is it possible to get funds? Then there is the internalization phase of funds. For the Alps, we are a little bit late because the phase 2014-2020 partnership and operational programs are about to be closed for the so-called embedding of macro-regional strategies so that these strategies can be funded. There are no new funds from Brussels, but there are funds that can be better used, and there are national funds and private funds. And so we need to do the embedding of these financial instruments. So for the Alps, we are a little bit late because the strategy is not there yet. But we have to include now these connections so that European funds co-managed with states and regions can be used for macro-regional alpine strategy. But of course, these priorities have not been defined yet in a precise way. So it's very good to define strategies, but it's important to implement them. I've been coordinated a strategy for Donau, and it's very difficult then to implement the strategy and to use the funds. I hope I have answered your questions. Mauro, we have some minutes left. I need to prepare the conclusions of this workshop. We don't have a lot of time available. Maybe
any input
some
from
questions?
You? This is your chance to give your input, but also I think that the people here are ready to listen. So the Commission is ready to listen if you want to approach them also beyond this workshop. But we have two contributions, please. Name and organization, please.
Buongiorno. Parlo in italiano perché anche il mio inglese è un po' arrugginito.
I will speak in Italian. My name is Ubertone. It was interesting to hear yesterday, especially from the president of Friuli Venezia Giulia, that we often refer to economy. We never refer to social economy. We never refer to economy, including the other dimensions of our situation, of our setting. We talk about environmental corridors, we talk about interports, about this movement of goods from the bottom upwards. But we have seen that in the territory where there are the freight trains, we see that in our territory, young people go away to study because they don't have the possibility of having adequate education level. It's good to have new instruments for e-learning, but this must be of the same quality of what is available in big cities. The quality of life is much higher, but especially for those who are able to be content with their main services. But for instance, in Piemonte, they have interrupted all railway lines. There are no longer local railway lines. And in Piemonte, we are redefining all hospitals. So we are carrying out actions that could be interesting for our territories. And these territories have to be further exploited because they can provide a value added to economy, because new work opportunities can be created. And indeed, this is a territory where people can live with a higher quality of life. But then services are lacking, such as railway line, and then you promote transport on road with consequent pollution problems, but also the problem of transport time. So not only impact on economy, but on the quality of life of people living in those territories.
My name is Paola Carrara. I work for the Italian CNR here in Milan. I have a question for Mr. Henkel. You have mentioned and explained a little bit the voucher approach, and you have mentioned also the Saber project, which is finished now, I think. My question is there a plan for disseminating the voucher approach and for letting it be more popular in the Alpine region? How do you plan to stimulate the uptaking of this approach within the different regions? Thank you.
Robert, if you want 1 minute reply, and I will then ask you to continue maybe bilaterally because we really are running out of time. So if you can give a very short reply of 1 minute, that's fine. But then please don't go too much into details now, because I would still like the chair to make a closing remark and thank everybody, and then we have to go really in 2 minutes.
Very short. The reason why I'm here is to distribute the knowledge, and the Saba project has their own website. We have Broadband for All. If you Google Broadband for All, you find this map I described, where each member state can click on the map of their country and find the providers who give you tomorrow your satellite at home. This is very, very simple, very clear website, Broadband for All. And the is translated, the national pages of this website is translated in your language, also in the regional level, national language. And so, and also the portal will be now translated. In this moment, we are sitting here in all national languages. So you can read your national page of the portal with all the information on broadband of your country in your language. And this is the best way to distribute our knowledge very quick, European-wide, also in the Alpine region. But I'm ready to come to your region and speak. There's no problem. Same is Saba project is finished, but the Bresat project with the same intention is still ongoing. It's also, you can find it, Google Bresat project or Saba Bresat, B-R-E-S-A-T. Saba, you have seen it on my slide. There you have very nice and very clear websites. We get all information on the voucher scheme in detail and more than I have described. Thank you.
Now is time for concluding, and I would like to thank all the skippers of the first session and the speakers of the second session all together, and thank you very much, every one of you, for this fruitful exchange. We will attempt to do a synthesis which will reflect as purely as possible these exchanges at the final session that will come just after the coffee break. And again, thank you for this action, and thank you for the quality of the debate and for the presentations of the experts.